Who the Wild Things Are with Ryan Maguire.
You gotta listen to your body.
Oh my God, maybe, I could get out there, I could do this.
Let's take a ride, find your wild side, real stories, see with your own eyes.
It's so beautiful.
I'm gonna have the best time out here.
I was in tears. I was like, that's the best, man.
This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Oslo. Oslo is a non-alcoholic seltzer company based here in Denver, Colorado, and they're making these amazing seltzers. Right now I'm drinking on the lime and mint spritz. They're full of electrolytes, adaptogens, antioxidants, and more importantly than all of that is they taste incredible. These have been what me and my friends have been drinking all summer, and each one of them has a purpose. The lime and mint spritz is meant to energize and uplift. They have new flavors coming out, lavender, lemongrass. This is more of a soothing and revitalizing drink, as well as the lemon and holy basil, which is meant to replenish and restore. If you're trying to find something other than water to drink, these are your go-to. They taste incredible. They kind of satisfy that urge to have something a little bit sweeter without getting the alcohol, all the sugar, the bad ingredients. If you're interested in trying out Oslo, head over to drinkoslo.com and you can use my code Ryan15 for 15% off at checkout. Appreciate you guys. Let's get to the show. Welcome back to Who the Wild Things Are. My name is Ryan Maguire, and I'm here to bring you conversations with the most wild folks on the planet. If you're enjoying the podcast, please leave us a rating and review on your podcast platform of choice. And if you enjoyed the episode, share it with a friend. Appreciate you guys. Let's get it going. All right, what's up, gang? Just hopping on for this week's show, doing a little solo podcast, and we're going to do basically a recap of the Leadville 100. Right now, it's Tuesday, and we were running starting Saturday at 4 a.m., wrapped up Sunday. So, been a couple days now, and I figured it'd be a good time to recap you on all the crazy stuff that went down. It was one of the coolest adventures of my life. So, I've had a lot of people saying that they would like to hear kind of a more detailed breakdown of it and the kind of crazy stuff that happened. And so this will be kind of a longer form explanation of all that. To boot, we're also going to have a documentary. So shout out to Jacob Showers, who filmed the Leadville 100 and was in our crew and documenting the story the entire time. So keep an eye out for that here over the next couple weeks. Leadville 100, what is it? The 100 is a long-distance mountain ultra trail run here in Leadville, Colorado. It is obviously 100 miles. It's a 50-mile out and back. So you start downtown Leadville, you run basically into the mountains, 50 miles out, turn around, come all the way back. Leading up to this, as some of you may know, I've been dealing with some health stuff. I don't know if it's a parasite or some kind of stomach bug, but generally when we were training for the Teton picnic this summer, I had to start doing some open water swimming, and I think I contracted something swimming in an open water lake near Denver, which was a good lesson for me. I think if I do more open water swimming, I'm only going to swim like in alpine scenarios. I think these public lakes are probably just disgusting at this point. So been dealing with that and was actually going to cancel the whole Leadville race. Was just going to withdraw. I was emailing the team about it. And basically what I decided was I had a plan to do the Collegiate West, which is a popular backpacking route. It is a section of both the Continental Divide Trail and the Colorado Trail. So I was planning on doing that with my friend Chris, and I figured if I could still do that effort about 2 weeks before Leadville, then maybe I was in good enough health to actually attempt to toe the line at the Leadville 100. So I went out and I did what's called fast packing, which means you essentially take just a couple items on your back and you sleep out in the mountains and you travel super light. I did the Collegiate West, which is 80 miles over the span of 2 days. So that's about 40 miles a day, and then got picked up after the second day and climbed up Mount Princeton, which is about 8 miles, 4,000 feet of vert. So on the whole weekend, I did 87 miles and about 24,000 feet of vert. And I felt like that was a good enough test to say, hey, I can, even though I haven't really trained much, I think just from me being an individual that spends a lot of time in the mountains, my body has good enough fitness and resilience to attempt the Leadville 100. With that said, I was still going into this effort with a lot of doubt in my mind. I didn't put in like a real ultra training block. I wasn't really running much, and I was very frequently dizzy, dry heaving, having a hard time getting calories down, and just a lot of inconvenient stomach stuff that doesn't really go well with ultra trail running. Because if you've ever ran an ultra or experienced one, you know that it's essentially a long distance buffet. That's what you have to do the entire time. You're burning so many calories, you're working so hard that you've got to keep eating and drinking throughout the entire effort. And that's been one thing that's been really tough for me as of late. We assembled a great crew for the event. The really nice thing about... let me turn that off. The really nice thing about a sanctioned event like Leadville 100 compared to maybe some of the solos that I do is that you get to have these like pit stops. They call them aid stations. So you get to stop, you get to see your friends. They can help you change out shoes and socks. They can give you food. They can help you in any way they need to in order to keep you moving. And I'm very blessed that I had a bunch of people immediately raise their hand when they found out I was running Leadville to be kind of in my crew. So massive thank you to all those folks. My pacers were my buddy Ryan Parmiter, Matt Trammell, and originally it was going to be my sister Erin for the last leg, but she got injured. So Osborne, who was on last episode, stepped up and paced me for the final leg. And then my crew was going to be Jacob and Aaron, Nicole, my mom, and Scott, her fiance. Unfortunately, leading up to the race, the week of, my Nana got put back in the hospital. That's my grandma. We call her Nana, and she was in the hospital, so my mom did not feel comfortable leaving for the weekend. So I went and saw my Nana in the hospital right before we left for the race, left for Leadville, and she told me that she was looking forward to keeping up, and she's always so supportive and always says that she lives vicariously through all our adventures, and she was looking forward to me bringing her back a belt buckle, and I told her I would make sure that I got across that finish line, earn the belt buckle, which you receive for being a 100-mile finisher, and bring it back to her. So that was definitely some good motivation going into the weekend. I was like, I might be a little sick, but there's no excuse. Other people are in the hospital feeling terrible, dealing with a lot more. So there's no reason I can't get up and run a couple miles. The week of, we got a little place in Copper, which is about 30 minutes away from Leadville. Couple of reasons we did that. One, it's a lot cheaper than staying in Leadville. We're kind of running a low budget operation, so that was a plus. And the other plus is that I get super burnt out and overstimulated by crowds. Leadville gets like super packed the week of the Leadville 100. So being in Copper 30 minutes away was just like absolutely perfect. You're still sleeping at 10,000 feet and getting like the acclimation in. You can still do some little mountain runs and hang out, but it was quiet and there wasn't a bunch of distractions, and we got to just get organized and get all of our stuff together, hang out with our crew. And I really enjoyed that setup. We had a nice Airbnb, and the crew got me super dialed in terms of all the different drop bags we had to do. So the night before, we've got these clear bags laid out, and you can organize for each point in the race a drop bag, which can have extra socks, extra layers. It can have food, calories, caffeine, whatever you want. And we got all that stuff organized, and then I tried to go to bed super early. The race starts at 4 a.m. in downtown Leadville. So that put us on a 2 a.m. wake-up call. So I tried to go to bed at I tried to get in bed at 7:30. And then we realized very quickly that our Airbnb did not have air conditioning. So it was 85 degrees in there. And I basically just laid there and sweat all night thinking about the race. Didn't sleep much. But I don't feel like I ever really sleep very good before a big race like that anyway. So wasn't really concerned. Got up at 2 and we geared up, packed the cars. Everyone got ready to roll, ate a little bit. And I drove over with Jacob. Typically on the way over to a race, I'll do some breath work. So I'll close my eyes, put in some headphones, and just go through some breath work. I feel like that helps me get centered and focused and cut out a lot of the noise. I also think that there could be some benefit to doing it in altitude. Really focusing on some intentional breathing can kind of help you for the start of the race, in my opinion. I'm not a scientist, but I bet you could cherry pick some science to defend that point. And then, you go in the starting crowd, you're in downtown. There's about 760 people, I think, that do the Leadville 100, or at least did it this year. And the energy is absolutely insane. You see just this legion of headlamps, because obviously it's pitch black outside. And the race founders come up, and there's this beautiful scene where all the runners are waiting in the starting crowd. They sing the national anthem, kind of that goosebump moment. And in your head, everything is just running through your mind. You're about to run 100 miles through the wilderness, and it's kind of like Murphy's Law. You just have to be ready for everything to go wrong. Nutrition falling through, your body failing, your mind failing. You're just thinking about all these things. And then they load up this shotgun, they fire it, and all of a sudden you're in the race, and we're running directly towards Turquoise Lake and kind of the beginning of the race. As happens with most hundreds, most people go out pretty fast and the pace is a little bit too quick. I tried to avoid that, but was definitely moving at a good clip. I'm going to pull up some paces here just so I have them as a reference. But essentially, the race starts super fast, and I was trying to get a little bit more towards the front because I didn't want to get jammed up when the trail narrows. And I think I did that well. I was running with one of my buddies, Mitch, for a lot of that. And then right away, at mile 9, I was having digestion issues pretty much from the jump. I had to keep popping off the trail and using the restroom in the woods. So that slowed me down a little bit, but still got to the first aid station, feeling great. First aid station's mile 12.6. It's called May Queen, and it's kind of right on Turquoise Lake, or just past Turquoise Lake. And the pace for that was 9:23. So 9 minutes, 23 seconds. So at this point, you're just under 2 hours into the race. I'm feeling pretty good. And an interesting thing is like so folks ask me, they're like, they don't understand like how you can run 100 miles. But what happens is when I run 10 miles and I'm like 7 miles in and my mind is like, we're doing 10, I'm tired at 7. When I'm running 100, that same thing, like that same multiplier tends to apply. I get tired at about 70, So when your brain knows that you're doing 100 miles, 12.6 feels literally like you're just, starting to stretch your arms. Like you're not even in the heat of the moment yet. You're just really getting warmed up. So it's kind of cool to think about how much you can do if you frame your mindset differently. And I've been wanting to think about that. I'm like, man, I wonder if I could just tell myself I'm doing 20 miles on days that I'm doing 10, and if it would make it a lot easier. It's just so interesting how the brain works that way. So at May Queen, they made a new rule this year. You can have no crew there, so it was just drop bags. So I got there. I basically refilled my waters, took some spring energy gels out of my drop bag, and I was on my way. I knew that the first time I was going to see my whole crew was at Outward Bound, which is in this giant field. It's kind of a party atmosphere. Like it's an absolutely wild aid station. And I've, mind you, never done any of this part of the course. The only part of the course I had done was half of Hope's Pass. But I had never done Turquoise Lake or run to Outward Bound. So this was all new to me. So after you leave the first aid station, May Queen, you start climbing up Sugarloaf Mountain. And my strategy was, because my fitness wasn't that good right now, relatively speaking, I felt like I needed to be conservative on the climbing, so going up all the mountains, and then I was going to hammer downhill. Downhills, your heart rate's much lower, and you can get by with less fitness, but you're going to take a higher amount of abuse on your body. It's going to be higher impact when you're going downhill. So I was like, I don't have that much fitness right now, but I can take a lot of abuse. So I'm just going to hammer downhill. And that was my strategy, and that's really what I did. So coming out of May Queen, I did this long climb, kind of just took my time. I walked some of it, ran some of it on the climb. And once I got to the top, there's like this 4-mile section that just winds down towards Outward Bound. And I hammered. I was like holding 730, 740 paces for about 5K, and probably got passed by like 4 people going up the hill. And then I probably passed 15 people coming down the hill. And that was kind of my recipe for how I was going to run this race, was really just focus on being a top level descender. So eventually we get down into Outward Bound, and you can hear it coming. Like I was probably still a mile away from Outward Bound, and you can hear people just roaring. And this was the first time you were going to see any crew throughout the race. So I turn the corner, I see the field where all the cars are, all the tents are, and I just hear people roaring. And before I even get to see my crew, there is people just absolutely screaming for me. Like it was as if each runner had its own massive crowd. And these folks, it was like I was their best friend coming through the aid station, and I didn't know any of them. And they were just so pumped and so happy. The atmosphere was incredible. It almost made me cry every time I'd come in, because here I was, just some like dirty long-haired dude running down the road, and everyone is just so stoked and so happy for you that you're attempting something of this magnitude. And I've done a lot of races. I've never seen vibes like the aid stations at Leadville. It just made everything so fun for me. And at this point in the race, I was having maybe more fun than I've ever had in a race in my life. I think because the training leading up hadn't gone as I expected it to. and I wasn't fit where I wanted to be, or as fit as I wanted to be, that I just came into it and I was like, let's just see what happens and have fun. And the entire beginning of that race, I was just racing with the light. Like, I was just racing with gratitude. I wasn't digging deep. I wasn't thinking about the rest of the race. I was just super present. I was flowing downhill and just had this smile that I couldn't wipe off my face. I was just like, I can't believe I'm here. I can't believe I'm at Leadville. Can't believe this is all happening. 2 weeks ago, I thought I wasn't going to be able to do anything. I could barely get out of bed. And now I'm running Leadville 100 with a bunch of my best friends. I probably had 6 or 7 other runners that I'm really good friends with in the race. So seeing them on course was great. A lot of my running heroes were in the race. So meeting them in person was amazing. It was all very overwhelming in terms of like how grateful I was. So yeah, I'm running into Outward Bound. You're kind of running down this mountain road and you start to see people, and then boom, I see Parm, who's one of my pacers, and Osborne, and they're just so stoked to see me. I kind of hand them my bottles and we talk about what I need. And then they take me to where the crew is. And we have this massive crew right next to Mitchell's crew, who's one of my best friends also running the race. And I mean, there must have been 30 of our friends there, just so stoked. Everyone's so happy. I'm saying hi to everyone. And it, like, yes, we were on task and I wanted to get food, and I changed into this very fancy cutoff visor, which was a hit, and a button-up shirt similar to this, which I wore unbuttoned. This is pretty similar to the outfit I wore. We'll get more to that later. But I kind of changed out of my colder clothes that I wore to start and into like more sun clothes, and just got some water, some food, and yeah, took off. The next time, so I'll give you guys the pace on that. That one, Outward Bound, we were running 10:20 pace. So that means that I was running, pretty slow uphill, probably like 15, 16 minutes, and then hammering downhill, like 7:30, 8 minutes. And that averaged out to 10 minutes, 20 seconds per mile. And let's see here. Oh, so I think that's for the total of the race at this point. So at this point, my total pace is 10:20. And so that's over a matter of just short of a marathon. So moving pretty good. I'm not like flying or anything, but I'm moving pretty good. And I was in super good spirits. It was my first time running with Spring Energy gels. They recently had like a kerfluffle. People got super pissed because Spring Energy gels say they're 180 calories and X amount of carbs, and some guy did like an experiment, and apparently they're way less calories and way less carbs than everyone said they were. So I found them on sale because people were pissed about that, and I bought a bunch of them. And I don't really care how many calories or carbs they are. I just care that I'm able to get a lot of them down, and they worked out super well for me. So big fan of the awesome sauce, like the green one. And I probably had between 15 and 20 of those throughout the race because my stomach was pretty jacked up. I started with water bottles full of Tailwind, and as I was mentioning earlier, just that first 13 miles into May Queen, I was having to the Tailwind was coming out the other end very quickly. And so I basically switched to water only and really depended heavily on the gels. I suck at fueling, and it's something that I've got to work on. I've had a problem with nutrition in a lot of ultras, and yeah, I think I just need to take it more seriously because I just kind of I'll eat whatever and just make it work. But maybe I would do better in these races if I would take that a little bit more seriously and think about it and practice. Because when I go on training runs, I'll drink 1 bottle or 2 bottles of Tailwind and it's totally fine. But then in the race, I expect that I'm going to be able to have 1 to 2 bottles of Tailwind every 90 minutes, and it destroys me. So I need to figure out what the best strategy is for that. So leaving Outward Bound, you're at like mile, I don't know, 24-ish. You now have 14 miles to run to Twin Lakes, and that's the next time you're going to see everyone. And Twin Lakes is kind of like the epicenter of Leadville 100 because it's at the base before you climb Hope's Pass, which you'll have to do twice. So at this point, I'm 14 miles away from Twin Lakes, and I've got to just basically do this trail run up to the base of Mount Elbert and then back down into Twin Lakes. Again, you don't have pacers here, so you're just kind of running. It's starting to heat up a little bit, and I knew the heat was going to be a big factor in this. I like to do a really light linen sun shirt with either a visor or my cowboy hat. A lot of people think it's like really funny looking, and constantly the entire race I changed into this visor and the sun shirt at Outward Bound, and from there the rest of the race I probably got 100 comments on my shirt because I was running in a long sleeve button up. Everyone else has got like these kind of like techie cool dry fit shirts and different things going on. I think all that's great. Run in whatever you're comfortable with. But for me, a long sleeve linen shirt, one, it holds on to a lot of water. Like if I put it into a stream and then put it back on, I just feel like I have this cool blanket on the entire time. I cut this visor like it was a hat that we got from Gov Games, and I just cut the top of it off to make a visor. I like it because it's white, so it doesn't feel like it holds a lot of heat. And yeah, you can actually release heat through the top. So the reason I also like this visor is because it has this nice like plastic snap in the back. I feel like a lot of visors have that crappy Velcro or like really hard to adjust systems in the back. So that's why I actually ended up using this one, as funny as it looks. So running from Outward Bound 24-ish to Twin Lakes, which is at like 36 to 40, something like that. The biggest thing here was I ran out of water pretty quickly. I slammed those 2 bottles of water. There's kind of a mini aid station in between called Half Pipe where I was able to get some more water, and I thought that was going to be enough to get me to Twin Lakes, but it wasn't. And so then I was at the point where I'm like, all right, I guess we're just drinking from streams today, because I wasn't about to like let myself get dehydrated. I'd rather just drink from streams all day, drink cold mountain water, and take the risk of any potential downstream effects. And this is kind of where like being a survival instructor, spending a lot of time in the mountains pays off. A lot of people are like paralyzed with fear about drinking from natural sources. But the reality is like if you, these are all like spring-fed natural streams that I'm drinking from, so they're pretty safe. And the other piece of it is if you are going to get sick, you're not going to get sick until like a week or 2 after you get infected with whether it's like Giardia or crypto or whatever waterborne illness you might get. So in that moment, I'm like, okay, I either get dehydrated or I drink from the stream. I'm drinking out of the stream 10 out of 10 times. And it just felt so good being able to drink cold water, dump it on me, and stay relatively close to baseline. I never got like super overheated. And I think that's why I was able to keep my mood so happy. I was just like flowing on the trails and having a lot of fun. Throughout those next miles, people really started getting zapped by the sun and started getting wrecked. And you could see their mood just kind of fall apart because they were overheating. Granted, it was only like low 70s, but in the mountains, when you're running 100 miles and it's super dry, low 70s starts to feel super hot. So again, stick to the same strategy. We're going up what they call like mini Mount Elbert. It's a fair bit of climbing, but it's really gradual. So I'm kind of like jogging. I mean, I'm mostly jogging, but I'm walking the steep bits and I'm keeping my heart rate super low on the uphills. And then once we crest the top of that, it's about 4 miles really steep down into Twin Lakes. And I just absolutely hammered that. Get to the top of that hill, and I just started hammering downhill for about 4 miles into Twin Lakes. That section is super fun. That's one of the only other sections that I had done before. If you're going to do Leadville, it's really nice to do at least the climbs beforehand. I wish I had done more of the course beforehand. The only part I had done is that bit near Twin Lakes and then the front side of Hope Pass. But once I got on that decline, that descent into Twin Lakes, I knew how far I was from Twin Lakes and how easily I had done it, the week before. And I knew, I was like, oh, I can just hammer this all the way into town, into Twin Lakes. And it really gave me a boost of morale. I was like, I know exactly where I am. I know exactly how long this is going to take. And I know that I can hammer downhill all the way there without like having to push that hard. So at this point, I'm, 40 miles in. Looks like my total course time coming in at Twin Lakes was 6 hours and 58 minutes. So I'm, leaving Twin Lakes, or at Twin Lakes, I'd been running for 7 hours. But when your mindset is on, I'm running for a day, 7 hours still feels like you're just getting started, or at least for me, it does. So yeah, coming down into Twin Lakes, it's similar to Outward Bound, where there's just lines of people on both sides of the course, but it's even crazier. And again, like I was getting emotional, like random people screaming their head off for you, everyone being so encouraging. You run past an aid station and they're asking if you want anything. And then just after the aid station, you see like your crew's actual setup. My crew had an amazing setup, like with a canopy and a chair ready for me. And everyone was just so excited, so happy to see me, so encouraging. Yeah, like I said, it made me like I almost wanted to cry, but I was so happy that I couldn't cry if I tried. So at Twin Lakes, this is the point where I really needed to focus on nutrition, because after Twin Lakes, you have to climb up Hope Pass, which takes you to the high point of the course, 12,600 feet. Then you go down the other side to Winfield, and then you come back up Hope Pass a second time and back into Twin Lakes. So when you're at Twin Lakes at mile, whatever it is, 38, 40, you have to get some good food, good nutrition, hydration, all that kind of stuff, because you're about to embark on what's probably the hardest part of the entire Leadville course. So Nicole made me a burger, and I was able to get a couple bites of that. Typically, you're not going to be able to hammer like whole meals during an ultra, but if you can get just a couple bites of something that's legit food, it's going to make a whole big difference. Like 3 bites of a burger with pickles, bread, cheese, and meat, you're going to be feeling a lot better than if you're only eating like gels and liquid nutrition. So we really tried to focus on getting any type of like actual food that I could get down. We also juiced some watermelons before he came. Watermelon juice was hitting, obviously, because it was super hot. And the other big thing that we did was I changed my shoes. So leaving Twin Lakes on your way to Hope Pass the first time, you've got to cross water several times. And so I wanted to wear a different pair of shoes for the Hope climb and Hope return so that I could put on my Speedlands for the end of the course. I went with the Speedlands for the majority of the miles on the course because they're a lot thicker and more cushion than anything I'm ever wearing typically. And that's because, honestly, Leadville has more road miles than anything that I'm really used to. Sure, there's a lot of mountain miles in Leadville, but going from spot to spot, a lot of times you're either on this like hard packed dirt or even cement, and it's high altitude running, like you're at 10,200 feet, but it's flat road running. And so I wanted to like have something that was a little bit more cushioned than most of the shoes I have. And that's why from the start until Twin Lakes and then Twin Lakes to the finish, I wore the Speedlands. From Twin Lakes, up Hope Pass and back a second time, I wore a shoe called the Ultra Mont Blanc. They have a carbon and a non-carbon version. I wore the non-carbon version. And they are the shoe that I wore actually in my last 100. So I felt comfortable with them. I wore those in the desert for the Canyonlands 100. They're a much faster racing trail shoe. They're a lot lighter than the Speedlands. So I felt like they would be good for climbing up Hope Pass and then a fast descent down the other side. As I had mentioned, I did the Collegiate West. Well, before we get there, the other cool thing about Twin Lakes is, I had my crew and they took care of me. And then I get up and I start running through the rest of the aid station towards Hope Pass. And I'm seeing all of my friends' crews and they're all like, let's go, like so hyped. So as you're going towards Hope Pass, you're just like riding this crazy high of seeing all your friends and just feeling super grateful for all the people in your life. It's kind of amazing that I have all these amazing humans around me that are down to spend their weekend either running 100 miles or helping one of their friends run 100 miles. That's a pretty special thing to consider. So you're leaving Twin Lakes and you're heading towards Hope Pass. The front side of Hope Pass I had actually already done because that's how you start the Collegiate West. So I knew going up Hope Pass from the front side wasn't that bad. I knew the turns, I recognized the terrain, and I'm heading up there. I'm moving pretty good, and I knew that climb wasn't going to kill me. What I didn't know was what the backside was like, and that's what everyone warned me about, was the backside of Hope Pass. So we're climbing up the front side. One of the really cool things about the front side, and one of the coolest things about one of the coolest aid stations of the entire race, is the Hope Pass aid station. They call it the Hopeless Crew. And this gang of people, they llama pack an entire aid station up near the top of Hope Pass. So right before you kind of finish your first climb up the front side, you get to stop at this aid station. And I mean, they have a legit aid station. They've got tents, they had mashed potatoes, they had hot food, they had cold food, they had watermelon. I must have had 10 cups of watermelon and just really good vibes. And then as I'm leaving the Hopeless aid station, about to crest Hope Pass for the first time, I see the guy in first place coming back down the other side. And I'm thinking, the guys who are in the front of the pack must be right behind him. And it turned out, I think Roche is his last name. He actually had a huge split. I didn't see McDonald, who was in second, for maybe another 15 minutes. And he actually ended up breaking the course record, which was a record that I'd stood since like 2005 from Matt Carpenter's. So it was kind of cool to be there on course at the top of Hope Pass, witnessing history, and this guy just absolutely smashed the course record. Mind you, it was the first time he had ever ran a 100-mile race, and he broke a course record that many people thought was like almost breakable. So yeah, I crest Hope Pass the first time. I'm like, this isn't that bad. Like, that climb was pretty manageable, and I was right back to running my race, which was taking my time, keeping my heart rate low on all the climbs, hammering the downhills. So I absolutely hammered down the backside of Hope and all the way down into Winfield. Winfield is this old ghost town. So if you don't know anything about Leadville, it was once one of the most rich towns in all of America because of the mining that existed back in the day. And Winfield was also a little town on the other side of Hope Pass. But once the mines went under, Leadville went into like a deep, dark depression. And that was when Ken Klober, the founder, started the Leadville 100, was because he was trying to bring commerce back into Leadville to try and like resurrect this economy by getting people to stay there overnight, spend money in the local restaurants, in the local lodges, things like that. So Winfield, this 50-mile marker aid station, is an old mining ghost town. And that is the turnaround point. So you run down Hope Pass, you get to Winfield, there's this nice aid station, you're turning around. It's a really good feeling coming into there because you're like, okay, I'm at 50 miles. Like, this is where the race is about to get real. Like, 50 miles in, I've just been smiling and laughing, flowing for about 50 miles. I literally had no care in the world. Honestly, was having like the most fun day of my entire life. And at Winfield, a couple things happened. One, it got super hot. As I was at Winfield, I saw a girl projectile vomit 3 times, just like one of those like wide sprays, what looked like Coca-Cola. And it was probably just a matter of heat and exhaustion starting to get to people. You see people sitting down at the aid station, despite there being no crew there. They're just like sitting alone, like in the shade, and you can see like the enthusiasm kind of leaving people's bodies. I tried to get in and out of there pretty quickly, but I did notice one thing, which was I was chafing super bad. Luckily, the medics there handed me some Vaseline, so I was able to put Vaseline on between my legs, and while it burned like hell, I think that was actually like a very important defining moment because I think that could have made my race super rough. So yeah, got some of my food out of the drop bag at Winfield. I still couldn't eat much, but I was like, getting a little bit of Coke down, drank some water, had some gels. I had a handful of mixed nuts, and got ready for what's considered the hardest part of the course, which is climbing up the backside of Hope's Pass. I don't know the exact numbers, but I think it's roughly like 3,000 feet of climbing over 3 miles. So it's incredibly steep. The footing is bad. It's really hot. And yeah, it's just a complete ass kicker because you've already ran 50 some miles at that point. One thing I made sure of before going back up Hope Pass was I stopped by the river. I put my entire shirt in this freezing cold mountain stream, put the shirt back on. So as I'm climbing up, I'm, relatively cold even. Like the water was so cold on my body that it was making me like below baseline temperature wise, which is great. That's where you want to be before you're going to climb a mountain like that. Coming up out of Winfield, it was a really cool moment. I had some friends out in front of me that I got to see, as I was coming down in Winfield, they were heading back up. And then when I was heading up Winfield, some of my friends that were behind me were coming down into Winfield. So it's like this turnaround point where you get to see your homies and you get to check in and see how everyone's doing. So it was really cool to see some of my running heroes, some of my best friends, and just see how they were handling the race. Got to stop and chat with a couple of them, but mainly people were mission focused, and I was really focused on trying to keep my heart rate low and just get up this climb. My mindset going into the backside of Hope was, I'm going to climb as slow as needed, but I'm never going to stop and take a break. And I felt like if I did that, my pace would be such that I wouldn't lose too much time as long as I continued to move, right? So I did that for a large portion of it, but eventually I was so tired and so hot that I would have to like stop for a second. I would dip my visor in a creek and then keep going. And then I met an individual, and him and I, we were really going through it on the backside of Hope. So we were going super slow, but just, one foot in front of the other, and had a great conversation and finally made it to the top. And that backside of Hope's Pass, I think if you're somebody that wants to do the Leadville 100, that is the crux of the route. The backside is twice as hard as the front side. I had already done the front side before. I did it a second time. It's not that bad because it's longer. And that sounds ridiculous, but since it's longer, it's more drawn out, it's not as steep. The backside of Hope's Pass is fucked up. It's super fucked up. The rocks are really rough. There's a lot of loose dirt. You're also, depending on where you are as a racer, if you're kind of ahead of half of the people or kind of in the front half of the pack, you're coming up while most of the people are coming down. So you're kind of sharing this really thin trail that has terrible footing, and you're trying to ascend something that's incredibly steep. So it's a very difficult thing. And if you are thinking about running Leadville, I definitely would say to get out there and try and do the backside of Hopes at least once or twice. So I get to the top of that. I'm kind of beat up at this point, and I really wanted to make sure that I descended well. We can look here at the splits for my aggregate time. So I crossed Hope Pass, the top of it, at 13:07. Let's see, it says 9:07. Okay, that's on the way there. Got it. So essentially, I get to the top of Hope Pass, and then I come down into the Hope Pass aid station for a second time where all the llamas are, and I just needed to like refill. I actually sat down on the ground for a minute. I ate a bunch of mashed potatoes and food, and I just kind of had a moment. I was like kind of hurting there, and I went back to my plan. I'm like, okay, the plan was easy on the uphills, hammer the downhills. But I was kind of whooped, and I was like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to hammer the downhills all the way back into Twin Lakes. And so I got up. My legs are super stiff at this point, and I just started like kind of dancing and flowing downhill instead of trying to hammer. And eventually my legs loosened back up, and I started catching people again on the descent down into Twin Lakes. And that's actually where I saw Mitch. Mitch and I came in basically to Twin Lakes like right at the same time. So I came into Twin Lakes the second time at 14 hours and 34 minutes with an overall pace for the first, what is that? You're at like 60 some miles, overall pace of 14 minutes per mile, which given that we had just done the two biggest climbs, like that's a pretty decent pace. It's not bad. So coming back into Twin Lakes the second time, again, I get to see the crew. I see like Eric Hinman and Bickle at first, and you know, they're bringing all the energy, and then I keep running through town. I see all these random people I don't know, and everyone's just going crazy. You feel like, you know, everyone there is there to support you, and it's the craziest thing. And then I see my crew. They're all mission-oriented, like, boom, what do we need? I switch back from the Ultra Mont Blancs into the Speedlands because they were soaking wet and smelled like horse poop. I think some of those, like, muddy pits have a lot of horse shit in them. So, yeah, my clothes, my feet, my socks, my shoes smelled like horse shit. And I actually changed shorts. I usually, for my ultras, will wear, I think they're called the Maverick shorts from Barbell. They've been absolutely amazing. I've worn them probably a couple hundred miles of racing. And at this point, I switched into my black shorts that I just got from this thrift store that I've worn for, I don't know, since 2018. So I just kind of like picked my two most trusty shorts. You want to be very cautious about what shorts you're wearing in a 100-miler, especially for the men, because there's a lot that can go wrong down there in terms of chafing and such. Get into Twin Lakes there. Take a little bit longer of an aid station here. I think for the other ones, I was about 3 to 5 minutes, but coming back from Twin Lakes, we planned to have a little bit longer of a break. You know, I had just done Hope's Pass twice, and I would need a little bit more food, took a couple more bites of burger, and did the clothes change. We brought a towel, but my towel's like super small. It wouldn't fit around my body, so all the dudes just like backed up to me, and I just changed my shorts kind of out in the open. It was a little bit risky, but we just kind of had to get the shorts off. They were soaking wet, and I think everyone there understands that, like, you're just focused on the mission at hand, and things like that happen, and, you know, everyone's just trying to get through it. So changed the shorts, changed the shoes, got some calories in, and now I get to pick up my first pacer, Ryan Parmenter, who's the absolute best person that I could have for this section. A lot of people come into Twin Lakes the second time and they think, wow, the climbing is over. But actually, you know, you get done with Hope's Pass, you get in Twin Lakes the second time, you're heading back, and you have a big climb up to the mini Mount Elbert area. So you have about 3 miles of steep climbing, and then about 10 to 11 miles of flat and down all the way to Outward Bound. And Ryan was coming from Nashville. He was a little bit nervous about his ability to do the climbing at altitude because it can wreck you if you're not used to it. But he was amazing. He was great vibes. He was keeping me in check in terms of like solving problems, keeping me caffeinated and fed, and keeping the pace under check. We ascended. I think he was splitting the times for us. I think we went uphill averaging 18 minutes per mile for like the first 3 miles. And then we started hammering downhill because at this point you're getting your last couple hours of light. It's like 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. And you really want to use, especially in 100, those last couple hours of light wisely, because typically the pace is going to slow down at night. So yeah, we got up to the top of that, and then we started this long descent, and we started hammering again. I wasn't hitting 730s like I was earlier on the descents, but I was probably hitting like 830, 9, and holding that pretty steadily, which, given that, you know, we were almost 70 some miles in, I felt like that was pretty good. Definitely started feeling it hit me around 70. I was starting to, once the darkness sets in, I always struggle a little bit. Like, it's just harder to get in a rhythm. So we kind of would do some walking and then running, walking and then running, walking and then running. On the way back between Twin Lakes and Outward Bound, there's a crew only stop that you can do. It's called Pipeline. And the crew was gracious enough to meet me there and kind of give me some extra aid, which was really, really nice. So if you're running Leadville, I definitely would have your crew plan on doing a little pipeline stop on the way back, because at the end of the race, you know, mile 70, mile 80, more crew, you know, more aid, more attention is just going to help more. Like, you just need a little bit more help. And I got to stop, eat oranges, and smash some watermelon juice, which I poured down my Aeon sweatshirt, which I loved that Aeon sweatshirt. I hope that it comes out in the wash, because I was not trying to do it, but I was just trying to drink the watermelon juice, and I just poured it down the front side of me. At that point, you like can't really comprehend that much of what's going on. You're just, you know, you need to keep moving forward. And so we left Pipeline. We knew we just had a couple miles left. Honestly, I wasn't moving super fast, but Parm and I were having a great time. We were having a great conversation. We were alternating between like an 11 minute per mile run into probably like a 15 minute per mile walk, and, you know, just moving really steadily. We weren't taking any breaks. We were just like continuing to move. I actually started playing some music out loud, and we were like kind of joking and having a good time. And then it started to rain. And also, coming into Outward Bound, you're hitting one of those road sections that I was talking about. And I realized, you'll see me talk about this on the documentary, I suck at road running. Like, when it comes to like descending in the mountains, I was flying past people. But on the roads, like, people would run past me like I was standing still, because I don't know, I guess my legs just aren't used to road running as much. So that was like a really hard section for me. I was just like trying to keep my running stride going, and obviously the rain started blowing in, so now you've got that, it's dark out, and you just realize, you're like, oh shit, like, the race is about to start. Like, I'm 75 miles in, and this is where it's gonna get real. Like, it's about to get legit here. And, you know, up to that point, you're just having the absolute time of your life, or at least I was, smiling, laughing. And then it was kind of setting in. I'm like, oh, you know, this is where, you know, I've been embodying the light the entire day, and just holding on to the light and spreading the light, keeping the light in my heart, and keeping everything full of gratitude and happiness. And now I'm going to have to go dark. I'm going to have to dig deep and be a fucking dog and like break hands with the light and move to the dark and find out like how deep I can go, because this is where it's going to get real. So we finally get into Outward Bound. I'm starting to get a little bit cold at this time because I'm really wet, and now it's time to switch pacers. Parm was bummed. Ryan Parmenter wanted to keep running. He was like, I did 14 miles. He's like, I would love to do another 10, but we had Matt Trammell there who was ready to pace. And so I switched Parm for Matt, and Matt was an amazing person to have overnight. He spends, a lot of time in the mountains, so I was really stoked to get to pick him up. He's also had some injuries and health stuff. He broke his collarbone and had surgery, so giving him this pacing spot actually helped him kind of like have something to train for. He started, focusing more on running and during his rehab process. So it was cool. This was like his test as well as a test for me, and we were kind of going out there as battle buddies. So yeah, it's super dark at this point. And Matt's section looks semi-similar to Parm's section. We're going to start with this long, steep climb up Powerline, and then we're going to do a descent down into May Queen. This climb is a little bit worse. Powerline is one of the things that a lot of people complain on, both on the run and on the 100-mile bike. It's pretty much too steep to bike up, and it's too steep to run up. So everyone's just kind of power hiking. I kind of broke my rule here, and I actually hammered the uphill up Powerline, past a bunch of people, and I ended up paying for it because we got to the top. At the top of Powerline, they have this crazy aid station on the way back. It's only on the way back, and it's only at night, and they call it Space Camp, and it's like this psychedelic party. There's like all these crazy lights. They have like alcohol at the aid stations, and everyone's like just wilding out up there, going crazy. And I just was not having any of it. I was just at that point where I just hammered the uphill, and I was like, I need to get out of here. And because I hammered the uphill, I really couldn't fly down into May Queen like I wanted to. And yeah, started to slow down a lot here. This was at like mile 85. And luckily, Matty T just kept me going forward, kept me laughing. But I really wasn't making great progress here. Like, I wasn't able to hammer the downhills anymore like I wanted to. And so we got into May Queen, and I could even feel it. Like, I could feel that the crew was worn out. So we're at mile 88 at May Queen. This is the last aid station before the finish line. And I get in there. They don't have a chair for me to sit in, and they have very little food left. Like, it's just kind of like sparse. Some guy let me sit in his chair for a minute. And I picked up Osborne, and it was just like time to go. And I was on a really good pace. So at this point, it was like, they're like, if you like run a decent little stretch here, we're going to finish under 25. I was on pace for like 24 hours, 40 minutes, 50 minutes, something like that. And I was like, okay, great. I'll just, run these last 12.6 in, and then, yeah, I'll see like what I'm made of and see how it goes. Matty T, my right calf had been pretty sore, and that's why I wasn't really able to descend. But Matty T, while we were coming down into May Queen, he's like, he's going through physical therapy school. So he's like, I can massage it. And he did. And I felt incredible at the May Queen aid, or coming out of the May Queen aid station. So from mile like 88 to 92 or whatever, Osborne and I were hammering. A lot of it was uphill trail running, but I was still running like 10-minute, 11-minute miles. And we were hammering. We're like, oh, we're going to smash. Like, we're going to be well under 25 hours. And then basically the best way I can describe it, my vision turned 90 degrees to the left, as if I turned my head almost, but my head was still looking straight. And I took 3 consecutive steps to the left and flew off the trail. The old cha-cha slide right off the trail. I don't know exactly, at least in this moment, when I'm there, I was so shocked. I couldn't even understand what was going on because I was running fast on these trails. Not fast, but for that point, for being at mile 93, I was flowing on these trails in the middle of the night. It's 3 a.m. And then everything stopped. And I ran off the trail, stood back up. I was like, that was weird. I tried to walk. I went left again. My body just kept going left. So I'm hammering these trails. David and I are flowing. He's like, yo, this pace is amazing. Hold this. We're going to make it. And then I fly off the left side of the trail. 3 consecutive steps in a row, all to the left of the trail, like a swerving car. And yeah, I didn't know what was happening. I was feeling so good, and it all just shut down all at once. And in retrospect, what had happened was I had started bleeding internally. And I was losing a bunch of blood through my stomach. In the moment, I didn't realize that was happening. You know, I'm 93 miles in. I just have, 7 more miles. I just got to run these out. And I'm like, why can't I just keep running? Like, my spirit is strong, but my body is failing. Like, something is going on. And I didn't know what it was. I didn't know if it was food or water or what. But, like, I just was so dizzy. And I couldn't move. And I start dry heaving and coughing like crazy. And my body was just bleeding internally. And it wasn't able to process anything. It was likely a combination of too many pills, Advil, caffeine, salt pills, all that kind of stuff. And a combination of a bunch of different foods and sugars, a bunch of stress that was put on my body that caused some kind of lesion and caused my GI tract to just start bleeding. But we didn't know this at the time. And Osborne did an amazing job. I think I probably would have quit at about mile 95 if I had anybody else. He didn't honestly offer me any sympathy. He was just like, you just got to keep walking. And at that point, I really didn't think I was going to finish. When he said we have 5 miles left, and I was moving so slow and in pain like I'd never been before, I was like, it's impossible. My entire body is failing. There's no way I can make it 5 more miles. It was the first time that I've been scared I was going to die on a race. I just kept looking at him, and I would just say, something isn't right. Like, I felt a lot of pain. Like, during races, during my life, I've been through some painful shit. And, I was in pain minutes before all this happened, but I was just running through it, hammering through it. But once I flew off the trail and I kept walking left and my body started aching, my stomach, my chest got tight, I knew something was wrong. But I also knew that I had to finish what I started. Like I knew that, there was other people going through the same shit. My Nana was in the hospital, and she told my mom to tell me that she's waiting for that buckle. And I told her I was going to go get her that buckle. And I wasn't about to break that promise. And I just, in my head, I was calculating because I had run fast enough that I had banked 5 to 6 hours up of extra time. And I had 5 miles left. And I looked at Osborne and I said, is there any way that we don't make it if I just keep walking slowly? And Osborne looked at me, he said, anybody else, it would be possible. For you, it's impossible. He's like, there's no way if you keep walking that you'll miss the cutoff. And so that's what I did. I was going through such body failure that even walking, I would have to stop and sit and take like a couple breaks. When normally my rule during an ultra is like just continue to move forward, but I literally couldn't move forward. My entire body was failing. And and looking back, I mean, when I showed the doctors the numbers, my hemoglobin and hematocrit numbers, which are measures of your blood, decreased by 30%. So I was basically just dumping blood during that. And yeah, it was tough. So what do? You lean on the people around you and you keep taking one step, just one more step. And then eventually, you do that for 30 minutes and that adds up to a mile. I had Osborne reach out, and I felt like I needed Nicole to come pace me. So she came and paced me for a bit. Just because I needed something to brighten me up, and I needed my crew. And luckily, the way Leadville works is like when you're a mile out, you can have the entire crew come and join you for the last mile. And that's what they did. The sun started to come up. Part of me was a little broken up because I had run the race of an unbelievably fast race for what I thought was capable. The entire time leading up to this, I was like, it would be a miracle if I make Leadville 100 in under 30 hours. And then I run this race on a 24-hour pace relatively easily until the end. And so to see that slip away at first, it kind of broke my heart a little bit. But sometimes the body, it corrects you. And I didn't deserve to run a 24-hour race because my body wasn't in that kind of shape, and it kind of corrected me and let me know that. And instead of pitying on the time, instead, as time went on, the sun came up and we just slowly as a crew walked in with huge smiles and laughed about the entire day, and just all the amazing things that happened. And my crew really cheered me up. Came in across the line to everyone hooting and hollering, and it was a very special moment. 26 hours and change, which was not the time that maybe I wanted, but I was very proud of the effort I gave, because just an hour or two beforehand, I was asking David to take me to the hospital, essentially. And naturally, when, the sun comes up and your crew joins you and you close in on the finish line, you start to feel better. And I did feel a lot better when we crossed. And then they got me home, and I was feeling on top of the world. Very proud of the effort that we put in as a crew. But then went to the restroom and had a bloody stool, and was basically losing blood from the back end. And at that point, we kind of talked about it and decided that we had to go to the hospital. Which, if you know me, I fucking hate going to the doctor. I fought tooth and nail, honestly. The only reason we went is because Osborne and Nicole decided that was what needed to happen. We kind of did some research on it, and they said that it should be considered an emergency. So we went there, and the doctors confirmed that, I was bleeding internally, and that I had massive drops in blood counts. Not massive, that I had drops in blood counts. And they were worried and asked to keep me overnight. I made the argument that what my body needed was rest, and that I wasn't going to be able to rest in a hospital bed like I could elsewhere. So they let me go home. And so now I've been trying to do the right things. Got a recovery IV, and did some electrostem therapy, taking acid blockers to try and stop the bleeding in my stomach. And they are now trying to do, it's not like a major surgery, but just like an endoscopy, I think is what it's called, to find the lesion in my stomach and find out where the blood is coming from. So that is where we sit currently today. Starting to definitely feel better. I think I'll be back to training tomorrow. But yeah, it was a hell of a race, hell of an experience. And I'm very grateful that I have such amazing people around me that support all these crazy endeavors. I think I learned a lot this race, not just about racing, but about myself. And it's another notch in my belt that I can lean on moving forward, and shit gets hard in life, and you're like, you have those experiences to point to of things that you made it through and things that you showed determination and will to get through. And there's a quote that Ken Klober says, which is, you're stronger than you think you are. You can go farther than you think you can. And I think it's incredibly true, because I did not think I could make those last couple miles. Nothing, it seemed so insurmountable to me. But ultimately, we really can do so much more than we think we can. I don't say any of this to encourage people to push themselves to a limit that's dangerous. I think I found my limit this weekend, and I've gleaned a lot from that in terms of not being maybe as indestructible as I thought. So I'm going to go back to the drawing board, try and get healthy so that I can be there for my loved ones and be the best athlete possible. But damn, I'm really proud of this one, and appreciate anybody who's listening. If you guys have any questions about ultra running, Leadville, or just want to chat, hit me up. And until next time, stay wild.